Okay. Hello everyone and welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I think everyone is in now who's waiting.
Yeah, everyone's in.
Yes. Can't see myself, but yes.
Okay, great. So we've got a few things lined up. Oh, so Dave, you've just appeared on my screen, and which is convenient because I think our first thing is to have a poetry reading from you, Dave. Are you ready to do that now?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So this is the poem that's in called The Green Man Dances. I probably wrote it 20 years ago, so I think the imagery still works, although humanizing the natural world isn't necessarily what we should be doing, nor humanizing it as a man, but the Green Man is still a powerful talisman. The Green Man dances in the wood, by withered nettles where the oaks once stood. The Green Man dances in the wood, but the trees scream murder as we burn them down. The Green Man has danced out under the stars, under changing skies for 1,000,000 years. Silver in the morning and the coal black night, waking again for the last long fight. The Green Man dances in the wood, by broken glass where the tall cedar stood. The Green Man dances in the wood, but the trees wail murder as we axe them down. Now the Green Man grieves by the poisoned stream, weeping bitter, scalding tears. The badger, the otter, and the hare lie dead. Dark rooks drift in circles as the sky turns red. The Green Man dances in the wood, by barbed wire fences where the elm once stood. The Green Man dances in the wood, but the trees weep murder as we hack them down. The Green Man danced wherever he chose, before forests were stolen and fields enclosed. The Green Man danced before winding lanes twisted into the madness of motorways. The Green Man dances in the wood, by dark choking shadows where the larches stood. The Green Man dances in the wood, but the trees whisper murder as we rip them down. The hounds bay blindly where the foxes used to run, but the hunt for the Green Man goes on and on. The ring of shrinking woodland tightens in a snare as the Green Man tracks, frantic as a frightened hare. The Green Man dances in the wood, by brackish water where the broad beach stood. The Green Man dances in the wood, but the trees breathe murder as we smash them down. We'll catch him and beat him and twist a jagged wreath. We'll whip him and scourge him and nail him like a thief to the highest branch of his last oak tree, with blackbird, dunnock, jackdaw, and crow. But when the green man dies, we all die too.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Dave. I think it's a perfect introduction to the subject matter, and also very telling that you wrote that poem 20 years ago, and you know, people have been talking about environmental issues for a long time, and still we're going backwards and not forwards. So I think the time was definitely right for us to produce the environmental crisis issue of Nerve magazine that this event is to celebrate the launch of. Unfortunately, obviously, the situation with COVID, which I think is, you know, another symptom of the same problem, has meant that we've ended up doing things a little bit differently. We don't have a print version of the magazine. We're meeting online. These are very strange times, but the topic has, you know, it's as important as it ever was. Just to explain, we got some funding from Lush, who, despite generally being a soap company, they support local. They're quite keen on supporting direct action campaigns for animal rights and environmental groups, and I think it was because of what we applied for with the issue of Nerve, with it being to support grassroots environmental organisations, that they were keen to fund this issue. And they gave us money to produce a print magazine, and we'll do that eventually, but we felt it was very important to keep going and provide that platform, really, because there's a lot of groups on Merseyside that are working really, really hard on environmental issues locally, and that obviously fit into a global context, and we don't have the NGO support that maybe places, you know, in London. We've got, you know, the bigger NGOs are based there. In Liverpool, there's very little infrastructure. So the idea of the Nerve environmental issue was to provide some support and to galvanise those groups and give people a platform to write and help build confidence that actually what people are saying is right. It's not just NIMBYism or people being sort of anti-progress or whatever rubbish might be thrown at people, but to actually help give people the confidence that they're right. And we've actually been overwhelmed by the submissions that we've had from campaigners, from poets, from writers, and hopefully you'll have all been able to have a good read. I'm just going to post a link to Nerve 28 in the box. Hopefully at some point we'll have a print magazine that people can read as well. But I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you all for coming. And I'm going to start the next bit of the what we're here to do, which is to try and help really network and for people to get to know what other groups are doing. So to start with the panel discussion, unfortunately some people haven't been able to attend, but I'd really like to warmly welcome Jane Hammett from the Save Oglet Shore campaign, and also Paul from Transition Liverpool, who are going to speak about what they're up to locally. So Jane, are you ready to go, Jane?
Oh, hold on, Jane.
I can only see Dave in the main picture. He seems to be recording. Is that right?
Yep.
Jane, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, who are we? We have to Jane.
Yeah, Jane. I have seen Jane. Oh.
She needs to unmute herself. She's muted.
Oh.
Jane, you need to unmute yourself. Bottom left corner of the screen, that's it.
Done it. Is that okay?
Yeah, welcome, Jane. Thank you.
Okay, I thought you could hear me, sorry. Just a brief introduction to what we're doing. I think in 2018, Liverpool City Council approved the development of John Lennon Airport over the Greenbelt at Oglet as part of their draft local plan. I was aware of it, but I think very few local people were aware of it, which was possibly not deliberate on Peel's part. 190 people responded, although other people may have attended the exhibition. I started the Facebook page off 2018. At the moment, we've got 2,500 people on the Facebook and 7,500 people who've signed our petition opposing the airport development, which I think outnumbers Peel's statistics. Why it's important. The area around Speke has lost vast areas of parks, recreational grounds over the last few years. And the Oglet, apart from being historically important to many people personally as well as archaeologically, is going to be sacrificed to, I think, Peel Holdings' ambitions to grab the area. It's also, for me personally, it's a very important ecological area. It's next to a Ramsar site, which is very, very important for seabirds, migratory seabirds. Farmland birds call it their home, 50% decline in most of those over the last few decades. And it's also high-grade agricultural land. Who knows what's going to happen with Brexit? So there's some of the reasons why I started the Facebook page. We've got massive support from the local people, not so much obviously from the council and councillors. Sorry, the other thing I need to mention is obviously the elephant in the room, the climate crisis and the added pollution that the increased air traffic and the new road, which was part of the proposal. So we are quite an active Facebook group, and we're opposing the council removing Greenbelt. That is the baseline. Thanks.
Thanks very much for that, Jane. I've just shared the two articles that Jane wrote for Nerve 28 in the chat if people want to take a read. And I'd now like to pass over to Paul, who wrote, actually it was the first article that we published way back in February before we officially started launching, because it was just timely to do so. Paul's from Transition Liverpool. Do you like to tell us a little bit about Transition?
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, great. I actually read that article this morning and realised, wow, February. A lot's happened since February. I think the main strands of that article is I think 2020 is quite an exciting time to be alive. And yes, it's probably a broad understanding of the word exciting, because yeah, quite scary as well. But you know, we're not too late yet, and we know what we need to do, and we have the tools and the ability to do it. And it was quite exciting in February, and it's even more exciting now, I think. But we'll get onto that a bit later. Transition is a global network. It was started in Totnes in Devon, Transition Town, Devon. A group of people got together with some permaculture ideas, And they were thinking, well, I could do permaculture, which essentially means I could go and build myself a nice little earth house and grow my own food. But when the world collapses, am I willing to sit at the end of my road with a shotgun to make sure no one gets at my cabbages? And people were like, obviously, that's not really what I want to be doing. So transition is all about trying to bring those permaculture ideas to a wide scale and to support society to move away from what at the time of beginning transition was peak oil as one of the main focuses, but basically trying to move people away from fossil fuels and trying to change, sort of promote behavior change and promote all of these new ideas. So what we do in Liverpool, we're one of the only transition cities in the world. Transition, as I say, is a global movement. There's hundreds and hundreds of them all over the place. In Liverpool, we've got two main projects that we're doing at the moment. One's called Spark It Liverpool. We're currently crowdfunding for that. It's going to be, so it's supported by the Mayor of Liverpool. We've got a £3,000 grant off them, a pledge for a crowdfunder. We're building towards £10,000 crowdfunding, and we're working with the City Council to close off some roads in the city centre and use on-street parking to create pop-up events, pop-up stalls for 15 independent businesses and 15 community organisations. And that's really, it is a climate intervention, but what it really is about is trying to get people to rethink civic space, rethink their streets, and just discover possibilities, because transition is all about trying to get people to imagine the future, imagine what's possible, and you can't imagine a safe future unless you've imagined the end product. So we try and promote storytelling, and we try and promote creativity and imagination. So we're going to play on the streets, and we're going to get people engaged with that. It's not just a place to park your cars and to walk from one place to another, but a place for people to live. And the other one that we're working on at the moment is it's an economy solidarity map. So there's been a few of these all over the country, and we're going to be hopefully launching in September, October time, a solidarity economy map of Liverpool City region. So there's going to be all of the green businesses, all of the independent businesses, community organisations. If you want to spend money, you can go onto our map and find out where you can spend it, where it will have the best impact. So obviously places like News from Nowhere, Squash Nutrition, your independent small businesses that keep the money local. So we're supporting community wealth building and getting away from an extractive model. So all the money stays in the local area. And as I'm network coordinator for Transition Liverpool, and I think what we do differently to many other organisations, Transition, we don't do a lot of projects. Even Spark It is really about providing a platform for other people. I just found myself going to lots and lots of different meetings and different groups and different organisations. I know quite a few people from here. You see these people all over the place, and I just feel that I was networking. I was building a network, so I became network coordinator. And one of our main goals in Transition is to ensure that we're not duplicating work, because everyone's on the same path, everyone's doing the same stuff, and we need to try and build that together. So we try and provide a platform. Really, we've got a really good website. We want to have features on there of all of the different organizations and businesses in Liverpool City region and beyond. We want to feature stories, we want to feature exciting things, and we want to share our bandwidth and get as much power as we can for all of the organizations that are building towards net zero, and to do it as much as possible in a non-political way, a non-partisan, non-party political way, and try and build those bridges with local authorities, with the people who can make decisions and the people who've got the energy to put the legwork in. I think that's a general sort of idea.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Paul. Now, I am hoping that we can get a few words from a couple of the other people who've written articles, which I have sent messages to, but people aren't reading their private messages. Roz, you wrote a piece about Extinction Rebellion Liverpool, and I'm wondering whether you'd like to say a few words before we go into the sort of discussion.
Yeah, I'm very happy to say a few words.
Brilliant, thank
Sorry,
you.
Katie, I've only just seen that email that you sent.
Yeah, it's okay.
But Paul, you're a hard act to follow, aren't you? Right, that was brilliant.
I just talk all the time. I was terrible 6 months ago, but you know, you get your head around it eventually.
I'll take some classes off you. I can't give so much information about XR Liverpool because I'm actually not in the country at the moment, and I don't know what they're planning. But XR as an organisation sort of hit the ground running in end of 2018. Last year there was a rebellion in April which got lots of attention, which is written in my article. And then there was another one in October, which wasn't as it didn't bring as many people on board as the previous one. April was really good because it was sunny and holidays, and it was all happy, ha ha ha, and lots of people joined XR. October there were things which were difficult. Spent the winter recomposing ourselves as an organisation, really, and then planned to have another rebellion in May. Well, of course, that all got scarpered with the COVID thing. So it's now been put back, and there's going to be a rebellion in the 1st of September. Now, the previous rebellions have been London-centred. The original idea being that you've got to hit where it hurts. You've got to hit the financial centre, and the centre is London. The problem is that people who are coming from outside of London, they're the ones who are not having anywhere to sleep. It costs a lot of money. There was a lot of, sort of, hey, why are we doing it all in London? So this time it was going to be the 3 capitals, Edinburgh, London and Cardiff. But Edinburgh's not been able to get it together, so so it's been moved to Manchester. So the northern one is in Manchester on the 1st of September, which is a week on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, something like that. Or not, it's not long. There's what, and at the same time in London and in Cardiff there will be actions trying to close down the authorities and centres of ecological destructions. I think, to be quite honest, I don't know the details because, as I say, I'm not in the country at the moment, and I'm not aware of what's going on. Nikki, who I saw there earlier, may have more idea of anything that's happening locally. So the idea for September the 1st is Nikki, if you can, is Nikki there? I can't see anybody really.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know much detail about Manchester. I don't know. Carol is also here. She may know about that. But locally, I think on the 28th, we are planning to go up to Crosby, around the marina and on the beach. And as you say, the main aim is to talk to people and try and get people involved in supporting what subsequently happens in Manchester and longer term. And then the 29th, I'm not quite sure what's happening that day. And the 30th, people will be gathering in New Brighton with the Wirral Extinction Rebellion group. Sorry, it looks like Carol's got a bit more information.
Yeah, the 29th, we're planning something at the airport, and we wanted to get the Oglethorpe people involved in that. But we're having another meeting on Monday to finalise these arrangements. So that's what we're planning. There's something at the airport on the 29th. And Manchester is meeting in St Peter's Square at 8:30 on the morning of the 1st.
Okay, so there's another rebellion on the horizon. We're about to take off. So Extinction Rebellion is still trying to keep what I think basically the main aim of Extinction Rebellion, the success of Extinction Rebellion, has been to up the profile of the environmental problem. Paul and Transition are doing fantastic jobs which we can jump onto, but I mean, it just happened to come at the right time, the right place, and it may, be taken over by Transition Liverpool or Transition very soon. But at the moment, that's its aim, is just to keep this momentum of information going. Is that right, Katie?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for doing that. Quite short notice. Just good to get up to date with what everyone's doing. So Frank from Friends of the Earth is going to speak in just a couple of minutes. I don't know if people saw, there was an action that happened yesterday, which was at the port, that was about the biomass imports. It was part of the Earth First summer dispersal, because Earth First normally has a gathering in the summer, but they had the dispersal instead. So there was an action there that was at the port against the port's environmental problems in general, and then particularly focusing on the biomass pellets that come from the southern US via the port of Liverpool, and then going to be burnt in Drax Power Station, which is the largest carbon emitter in the UK. And the event was a bike ride against Ecocide, so it started at the pier head and then went down to the port, then on to Rimrose Valley for a picnic to highlight the issue of Rimrose Valley, which is under threat because of the port plans to expand, and then they're putting pressure for a road expansion. And then there was a noise demo at Walton Prison about incarceration, just highlighting that, and then a visit to Robert Tressel's grave. So it's great to hear that the Rebellion is going to have something at the airport, because the Earth First event focused on the sort of north of the city, so it's great there'll be something at the airport next week. But yeah, I think it's very heartwarming that everyone is starting to join up a little, and yeah, Laura's just pointed in the box, there was an action a week ago with people all along the route of the Drax trains, and that's great, because we're all linking together across the north really, and building these links and seeing the bigger picture. So it's really good to hear about those that the momentum is going to continue, and that I think COVID was a little bit of a shock to not know what to do in terms of actions, but I think now people are feeling like it's time to get out and do in-person action. So it's really good to hear that there's more things lined up. Now, if Frank is ready, I'd like to hand over to Frank to say a little bit about the work that Friends of the Earth have been doing, and I'll post Frank's article as well.
Hi.
Thanks, Frank.
I know some people here, some of you know me, and some of you are very familiar with Friends of the Earth. I have to start with Don Naylor was going to speak. I've just caught up with, and was at the last minute unable to join the meeting. And to be honest, he and one or two others, Annie Mary, for example, are slightly better placed than me these days to speak about Friends of the Earth and Liverpool Friends of the Earth. I'm still involved, but not as much as I used to be. But for those who aren't so aware of Friends of the Earth's history, it is an organisation which started about the same time as Greenpeace in the very early 70s. But the difference was it began with local groups, and a national kind of office built from that. It's for various reasons, which would be a long discussion. It's not quite so strong on the local group front as it used to be when I was the regional coordinator for quite some time. The from 98, 99 for about 11 years. And at one point, I think we had 28 local groups across the Northwest, something like that. And now I think it's fewer than half of that. And that's been a challenge, but there's been a bit of a revival with the use of social media and so on, and some very good Northwest regional based people sticking up for the region, the national organisation, which of course, like a lot of campaigning groups, has got less donations coming in since 2008 particularly. But we are focusing during the lockdown, that as people will have seen and been involved in some cases, there's been a push for recognition that people want, for example, to use road space for walking on and cycling on and feeling safe on, and for community activities, and not for cars to be rushing through. And so there's been something that's been called the Emergency Active Travel campaign and coalition built around that. It's not just Friends of the Earth by any means, but Don's one of the people who's been hugely active on this, and probably some people in this meeting too, more so than me. But the way that Friends of the Earth has tended to work has been a mixture of sort of direct, sort of, if you like, traditional protests and placards, and sometimes being visible on the streets and dressing up in costumes as the Gene Beast. I remember that from a few years ago, when the genetic modified foods were the major campaign. There's been parts of that, but quite a lot of behind the scenes lobbying, and being a name that being a name that MPs and decision makers recognise that they're going to have to deal with, because we had expert legal people and parliamentary campaigners at one level, but at the other level they knew that they had local members in their constituency, and that the organisation, broadly speaking, had a good name that they had to answer to. The other area in which we've worked, Friends of the Earth has tried to work strongly over the years, has been at the planning level, because we're, this is certainly my experience, so many times, and the Save Oglet Show will know well about this. So many times when you start a campaign and get lots of local support to say, don't build here, this is our, protect our green space, or let's have a cleaner environment where we are, you find that there's a planning regime in place that has gone through, to most people, very obscure but legal channels, and cannot be overturned simply by protesting, unless you can do something huge politically, because it's enshrined in law. So a way that Friends of the Earth has often worked has been sometimes very unspectacularly and tediously, but getting into regional and local plans when they're being established, to make sure to try to make sure, not always succeeding by any means, that there isn't the possibility of building or expanding an airport or a motorway or a housing estate where there should be green space, and where people should be consulted more about what they want to do with the space. Is that what you wanted, Katie, a kind of general overview like that?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Frank. Yeah, just to let people know what you've been up to as well.
I'll put the website in.
Yeah. Yeah, if people feel free to use...
Locally, we're also on Facebook, and some people are on Twitter.
Yeah, do feel free to use the chat function for sharing information, although sometimes I found that in some Zoom events people start having off-topic conversations in the chat, which I find a little bit rude, but no one's done that so far. Okay, so I think we're just going to oh, hang on. So, Paul R, I'm being told that you have a question. Oh, what's happened to my screen? Oh, Yeah, did you have a question? Is that right?
No, I just wanted to say, actually, Frank has and Friends of the Earth, we've been supporting them. I know tonight's about working together and joined up thinking and stuff like that. So perhaps the active travel thing's a really good one to start with, because Friends of the Earth Don and Annie led on advocating to all local authorities to use a commonplace, which is sort of a mapping project, because a lot of the local authorities said, well, we want ideas about where to do active travel, and please email us. And the idea of commonplace is it's like Google Maps. I'll find the link and put it into the chat box. But everyone, once you've commented on the map, everyone else can see your comment and you can agree with it or disagree with it, and have that and bring that conversation to the fore. And thanks to Friends of the Earth starting that, and people like Transition and other organisations in Liverpool supporting them with advocating that, we managed to get around up to 20 people signing, 20 different organisations, including trade unions, and we've got almost all of the Liverpool local authorities now using Commonplace to plan their active travel. And as part of that, Transition and Friends of the Earth were able to support XR with one of their actions, which was a mass cycle down West Derby Road, because obviously there's been a lot of kickback for the active travel infrastructure. So we were able to show that people are using it, and also show that actually we were probably quicker than most of the cars going into town on that day. We got a couple hundred people on that cycle route. So that's a really good, thanks Frank, that's he's put the link up there. That's a really good sort of example of how we all work very, very differently, but we can work together. I suppose XR and Transition are two different sides of a coin, because we will try and engage the people that may be put off by some of XR's more sort of front-facing actions, and so we're able to cover more ground between all the organisations doing distinct things around the same topic than we would do if we were doing things on our own.
Thanks, Paul. I think, yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, yeah, building those relationships, even if they're not always so visible to the outside world, can really create a lot of strength. And I think one of the risks of the current situation is that I think people are carrying on organising, but the risk is that we organise a little bit in silos, so we stay within our own small groups, because we're not getting to go to those wider sort of larger events where we get to network and meet other people. So hopefully this event tonight is going to give an opportunity for us to open up some of those conversations. So I think, Anton, are you ready to read your poem?
Yeah.
Okay, so just before we pass over to Anton, oh, hello, we can see you. Didn't think we were going to get to see you.
Okay.
Yeah, so just maybe Anton's going to read a poem, and then we're going to have a sort of short instrumental break so that people can have a little break, get a drink. But maybe in that instrumental break, if you could just start to have a little bit of a think. I know it's sort of set up as a panel. I'm not really so in favour of panels, because they give the impression that some people have more knowledge and more answers and more to say than others. And I think actually everybody has got something to contribute and has their own perspective. So although I'd really invite people with specific questions to the people who've spoken, also I'm just really keen that everyone gets to have their say as part of a general conversation around you know, how we can support each other, how we can make sure that conversations remain open between different groups and we avoid just kind of losing touch with each other. So I'll hand over to Anton. to read his poem, and then I'll just briefly come back before we have a little break. Okay, so over to you, Anton. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, when the seas have risen by me, okay, ascension above the seas as they rise higher than we ever should have caused. I sought a path and ferried sanctum within nature's stern course, to a durable retreat of a greyish, warm and blue Atlas mountain vantage, leaving behind destructive character and terrible mountains of rubbish and terror pain. While away eons in creative contentedness, not over wanting or consuming, painting views of the conditions of my vaporous, altitudinous stay, images of atmosphere and elements, in wait for nature to repeal her reprimand, and then calm rejoice and elation in art inspired by the reappearance of land. As seas abate, I venture forth to weave a humble culture in a worldly creative state, with those who return from above to admire beauty and tread carefully. Thank you very much. That was about my what I would do if the ice caps melt and we're all covered in water. I would go up on high and basically draw and paint forever.
That's great. Thank you, Anton, for that. And also, I've just put in the chat, but the painting that came up was also a piece from Anton. So thanks for that. Okay, so I think Neil's just going to give us a brief musical interlude. If people want to, get yourself a quick drink. And also, if you want to just, I'm going to post in the chat again the link to NEAR 28. Just have a little scroll down and just to kind of give an overview of all the things that are going on. Hopefully it'll give some inspiration for the conversation that we'll have when we return in just a few minutes. Okay, so see everyone in a couple of minutes. Won't let me. Hello? Hello, I can't see my face for some reason.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. That's the main thing. So that was some more music from Rob Harrison's Apocalypse Jukebox. I've just posted in the chat a link to his article, which was written before COVID hit in relation to environmental issues. Then kind of was given some more significance by COVID, although I've kind of penned COVID as the apocalypse that you can enjoy from the comfort of your own home. And I think, if we think this is bad, we've not been paying attention on climate change. I'm now going to pass over to Teo, who's going to read a poem which came about after COVID. And I suppose in that vein, it covers everything really, and how the white man has been plundering without a thought to the consequences for centuries, with all sorts of colonial history, until now everything's come to a head. So Teo, over to you.
Thank you, Katie. Hello, everybody. The title of my poem is Greatness in a Time of COVID, which is a reaction to the pomposity of the worst performing governments in the world, without them being able to see it. A line just popped into my head, which ended up being the last line of this poem, Greatness in a Time of COVID. We made our homes in the belly of the beast that devoured our ancestors and spat them out on the other side of the globe, that stole our gold and rubber, our skills and knowledge, our art and music, our history. It gorged and fattened itself, dressed in unmissable finery, and declared itself proudly the Empire. It saw its greatness in our puzzled eyes as we stared up the barrel of a gun from every corner of the earth. Its guns were needed still, we were told, to protect us from the socialists and communists. Capitalism, our enslaver for centuries, would liberate us one day. It bought our rulers and continued the quiet theft of our humanity and our dignity as it planted poison and bombs where once there was rice and diamonds. And then the virus came, silent, swift, and deadly. We answered the call to the front line to confront this invisible enemy. We asked simply for gloves, masks, visors, and gowns. As we fell one by one, we finally began to see that what the gentle ones had been whispering loudly had been true all along. We'd been feeding on the beast's excrement, unmindful of the fact that the empire has no clothes. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Teo. And I think that it's a quite fitting point to go into the second half. We really can't rely on the government, on the system to save us from the mess that it's got us into. It's the system that's killing us. You know, the government has an entirely neoliberal agenda. Its only interest is in maintaining profit and the status quo. So we've got to look for ourselves for the solutions. And as I said before, the word I was thinking of when it comes to panel discussions is experts. You know, people like to look to experts for the answers, but actually no one is a better expert on their own life than yourself. So we've all got a part to play and a contribution to make in solving the climate emergency. It's not our fault. We shouldn't have to be sorting this out, but we are part of the system that's created this problem, and for the sake of our survival and that of our communities, we sort of owe it to ourselves and each other to step up to the challenge that we don't want to have to take. So with that in mind, I would now like to invite, if anyone does have any specific questions for the people who've spoken, to start to line up with your your questions, and then we'll hopefully get some good conversation flowing. Now, I think people can control your own microphones, so I think if we just ask if people mute yourself unless you're talking, and just unmute yourself to talk, and I will, and also you can put questions into the chat as well, and I'm just gonna remind people that what we're looking at is working together, supporting each other for positive change, how we can work together to get environmental issues meaningfully on the agenda locally, how different campaigns can work together in a coordinated way to support each other, and how we can ensure COVID is a catalyst for positive change, rather than it being used as an excuse, which is the risk that, you know, it's whatever it takes to get the economy up and running, and no consideration for anything else. I'm just gonna post that there as a little reminder. And Sorry, I'm just emailing someone who's late and needs the link to get in. Just say. But I'll start off with a question. Oh no, I won't, because Carol's put a question in the box, which is for Jane. So Jane, Carol is asking, are there any endangered or rare species around Oglet Shore? This has stopped plans going ahead in other areas of the country.
Yes, there's quite a lot. Just recently, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. We've registered, we have a very competent bird watcher in the group, and I've registered barn owl, which the location is secret, but that's registered. We haven't found any great crested newts, but that doesn't mean that there isn't any there, because the habitat is there. But there are, the farmland is home to many farmland birds, and they've faced 50% decline. So it's a really important habitat. The problem is that Peel's ecological surveys, I believe the latest one took place in the non-breeding season. When they did an ecological survey for the solar farm on Hale Heath, they did it very early in March, in the coldest spring for about 10 years. So we can't really trust their surveys. But anyway, before they proceeded, they would have to do another survey. But does that answer, Carol? It's very rich in wildlife. I mean, I was there this swallows nesting in the stables, skylarks. There's the only place you can actually walk and have skylarks flying around your head in Liverpool, as far as I know.
Thanks, Jane.
Just add something, Katie. The only problem with having these species is that these ecology firms, they specialize in moving and creating alternative habitats. And if you look at the master plan, Peel's master plan done by their PR firm, they talk about, you know, finding alternative habitats in the area for these rare species. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, yeah. I mean, there's someone who I think was maybe going to come tonight, that she actually gave up on being an ecologist because the whole industry, it's about paving the way for developments to go ahead, rather than doing surveys to, you know, to say, well, no, this can't go ahead. So I think where we know people who are able to do those surveys and they're not doing it on a commercial basis, that's a good resource that we can share, you know, between if there's sites that are under threat. There's a second question here from Nikki, that Nikki would like to hear a little more about the network that Paul spoke about. So can I just clarify, do you mean transition towns or another network? Sorry, Nikki.
Well, I've been thinking for a while, and was actually going to embark on a bit of background research myself, of just about a directory of all the groups that are actively campaigning around environmental issues and green space issues in Merseyside, and just so that we can easily inform each other about what we're doing, because I know XR fails to manage to get our message out quite often. And when Paul, when you were speaking, I wondered if your network was what I've been thinking of, and whether it already exists.
Yeah, okay. Just before I answer that, because I will forget otherwise, Oglet Shore, all the surveys and stuff like that, if you've got 7,000 people on your Facebook group and you can mobilize some of those, the iNaturalist app is a free app that you can get on your phone, and you can go out, and if people have done it all over the country. It's been really, really successful at recording plants, animals, etc. And you don't have to be an expert. All you got to do is take a photo of what you find, and it logs it all. And that is actually used as it can be used in planning applications. If you can do a map jam in the area and get some of your supporters down there, then who knows what you will find, and it may well help you to sort of build your case.
Can I just briefly respond before you go on to Nikki's?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. There is something called the Biobank, the Merseyside Biobank, and a guy called Ben Deed. And I requested all of the information for the specific area of the Oglet, as well as the area the other side, which is Halton. And I've got lists of all of the flora and fauna that are there, and when it's been observed. And I'm also in the British Trust for Ornithology, and they are regularly kind of recording the bird life there. So we have got an ecologist in the group as well. Yeah, thanks. Great. Anyway, I'll let you go back to the other question.
Great. Okay, Nikki. So Transition is basically in Liverpool as a core group of about 6 people at the moment. We had a larger group before lockdown, but a lot of those have sort of fallen by the wayside. And if I'm going to be brutally honest, they weren't hugely active members. So, you know, I think our main issue at the moment is we are limited in terms of capacity. And I'm sure that rings true with everybody. And I run the Twitter, I run the website, and I'm running Spark It as an event, and also doing as much networking as I can, which started off quite as an ad hoc sort of thing, just because I was going to places and speaking to people. We're hoping that the solidarity economy map, there's going to be lots of different areas on that, which we're going to look at stuff like food as one of the first ones. So independent small business producers, farms and things like that. But that network that we're building, it should be, I'll find, once I've finished talking, I'll find a link to the Oxford map, which you're going to have a look at. It should be, when we launch it in Liverpool, we're going to launch it as part of the solidarityeconomy.org. We're going to be the next one in their new sort of branch of software. Hopefully what that will be a map that everyone can collaborate on. So we're going to facilitate that, as in put it up and make sure that everyone can access it. And we have already started to compile a list of small businesses, independent organizations. I'm not entirely sure how much campaign groups are on that already, but that is going to be a big part of the resource once it's up and running, and it will be a resource that gets developed over time. So if you want to email me, I will link you up with the people in Transition who are developing the map, because I'm sure they'd be more than happy to collaborate with anyone else who wants to on trying to develop this and make it a useful tool for everybody. I started in Transition because I wanted to build an eco home in Liverpool, and then I wanted to do all these different things, and then I went to Transition to try and get people to do my stuff, and realized they were already doing the stuff that I wanted to do elsewhere. And every time you have these conversations with people, you find someone's already doing that, so I can help them rather than start from scratch. So one of the most important things that we can do is obviously build that power base so we can advocate for change. So yeah, we'll hook up, and hopefully we can use that solidarity economy map to build a network of activists so we can all find out what's going on and be more economical with our time.
Great, thanks, Paul. I think that's absolutely what this is all about, isn't it? Phil, you've got a question here for Jane, which I suppose it's it's particularly targeted around the airport, but it could apply to a lot of issues. So Liverpool City Council have declared a climate emergency, and they're still happy to talk about the need for expanding the airport for economic reasons. How do we address this hypocrisy? Thanks for that, Phil. Jane, do you want to answer that in the first instance?
Well, I'll try to. I mean, we've tried to engage with the local councillors in Speak Garston, who are vocal in their support, but politically, the council seem to be totally behind what I see as Johnson's vanity project. It seems to be a nonsense that 40 minutes up the road, we have an international airport with transatlantic flights, and even major international hubs like Heathrow and Gatwick are kind of really scaling down, making redundancies, scaling down flights, and we must be the only regional airport that wants to expand. I think the basis for this is it's the modus operandi of Peel, and it is a land grab. It's undoubtedly Peel are not interested in an airport, an international airport. They want to expand the runway in order to get Greenbelt removed, and then add to thousands of acres in the northwest. If you read my article, it's what they did in Teesside, and it's what they did in the Dunlop site, which they needed for airport development, and now it's housing estate. I don't know. I mean, apart from kind of trying to engage with the politics, the only hope that we have at the moment is the fact that the independent inspector is going to reject it. Because unfortunately the council seems to be, the Labour-led council seems to be totally backing this. I'm sorry, I haven't got any wonderful solutions, but other than local activism, it's all we can seem to do. And I'm going to be speaking at the independent inquiry as well, as was about 3 other colleagues of mine. So I think that's all we can do. Just keep on protesting and join with other groups and make our voice heard. Like we're going to have the demonstration at the airport on the 29th. Okay.
Oh, yeah, great. Thanks, Jane. Yeah, I think we're sort of almost like a victim of our own success politically in Liverpool. We're so strongly Labour that it renders our democracy quite stagnant, and that's, at the moment, that's a curse. And yeah, I'm sort of getting into party politics is the way to solve things, and I know some people have had their fingers badly bitten with trying to do so, but is there some hope in the sort of people who are coming up through the ranks? I think another issue that's really touched upon at the edge of a lot of the articles is Peel Holdings and just how much power they exert, albeit in a very insidious way. And I think that's something it's there in the background with a lot of these things, and how we can sort of engage with that. I mean, I do feel like it is now the time for us to start really taking them on in a more what's the word, sort of strategic way. You know, every environmental meeting you go to, people will grumble about Peel, but we don't do much because we're all focused on our own small issues to sort of take them on. That's almost a subject for a whole, one of these things, and maybe it could be at some point. I don't know, has anyone else got any responses to that that issue of the contradictions, whether it's at the local council level or the combined regional authority level, of what they say and what they do.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to dominate too much, but I also work for the council in children's services before people start giving me evils. And I'm a Green Champion within Liverpool City Council. It's a very schizophrenic organisation in some ways, because a lot of some of the city councillors have come to me and have said, right, we want your project in certain areas. We want to use this as a catalyst for change. And yes, it is very, very traditional Labour, but I think the boat. I believe the boat's turning. It's just a massive boat, and it takes a long time. And I would hate for the likes of Oglet Shaw to be sacrifices or casualties on the way to where we are going to get to in the future, which I do believe is going to be a good place. We just need to, in the short term, and I say short term, maybe the next 5 years is going to be really, really key in that. There's things that are happening at the moment. I just posted in the chat group about donut economics. Donut economics is a really amazing model. And if you haven't read the book or listened to the podcast or whatever, I'd highly recommend you go and have a look at that. Amsterdam has just become the first city in the world to adopt donut economics as its model, its mode of operations. And I won't go into that because it's again another evening's worth of conversation. But the Preston model is another way of they've done amazing things in terms of building community wealth, and they do things like, instead of giving a £2 million contract to build a building, they'll split it into 100 different contracts for a plasterer and an electrician, or all these different services. So small businesses in Preston are able to actually bid for those instead. So Liverpool is still linked in with the likes of Peel and Arup and all these huge multinational organisations, but they are linking with Preston to develop a Liverpool investment bank. So could be a community-owned bank which will give loans to small businesses to help build that community wealth building, which is happening in Preston and in the Wirral. So I think in the future it will be better, but again, I haven't got the answer to how we stop Peel in the short term, but we need to, obviously. But I do think that there is the will there, and there are the councillors there in the next few years that will hopefully start to see a difference. But I do think that is around the fact that there are so many activists out there doing amazing things and pushing these amazing campaigns that are changing public opinion. We need to keep changing public opinion and keep building our power base to ensure that Liverpool carry on that way.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Absolutely, and it's really good to have that injection of positivity. I think it's really easy when you've been involved in fighting on these issues for a long time to get jaded and worn down, and it's really good to hear someone with loads of enthusiasm for all these solutions. And I mean, I do get frustrated when I look at what's going on in Preston, because I think that could happen here, but it was actually you saying that prompted me to say my comment about the stagnant democracy here, because I feel like that is the biggest barrier to local government being a solution, which makes me, more kind of, the only solution is to take matters into our own hands, which is, historically where I've always come from. I mean, I wish I could have, allowed my politics to become less radical as I've got older, as I've seen, local government do these nice little initiatives. So I could, think, oh yeah, but they're really not doing it here. So yeah, that's my little rant. But yeah, thanks for that, Paul. We've got a question here from Carol asking whether any groups have approached Steve Rotherham about his plans for green energy solutions and the tidal power on the Mersey, while at the same time protecting the natural habitats. And I know that's something that's sort of Frank's article touches on that, because Steve Rotherham came in with, you know, grand commitments about, you know, carbon zero, and you know, I saw him speak at the Friends of the Earth Gary Mahoney event, and he sounded great, but you know, what's he actually done? It's quite limited. Any other groups have had any engagement with Steve Rotherham that they can feed in?
We wrote to, well, it was Lynn Moneypenny in our group who wrote to Steve Rotherham very early in the campaign, and he was all for the environment, but in terms of the airport, he said that jobs were more important. So, you know, paying lip service to the climate catastrophe, but still jobs.
Okay, so I've just posted no jobs on a dead planet. This is the slogan of the moment, I think, really. And it actually came from a woman who lived in Appalachia, where they cut off the top. It's called mountaintop removal. They take the tops off mountains to get the coal, and it leads to loads of toxins leaching out into the local water supply. They particularly impact on poor communities of colour, and she was an environmental organiser who fought against this, and this came from her, no jobs on a dead planet. And sadly, not long after, she actually died of cancer that she, you know, caused by all these chemicals that she was forced to live in, because you know, if you don't have much money and you live somewhere where there's a lot of environmental destruction, you don't have the choice to leave. And I think air pollution is such an issue here. You know, even the air we breathe, you know, we breathe is it's free to breathe, but it's full of pollution, and how our choices are limited. Yeah, how can they say that jobs are more important when the air we breathe is killing us? But I think we need to really start trying to make that argument with some force, and also, where was the tabloid headlines about all the job losses when they switched renewable subsidies from solar and wind to biomass wood pellets? That really affected a big sector of the economy. Lots of small businesses that were started up with business plans that were based on the renewable subsidies. There was nothing about jobs there, the way you hear when people talk about shutting down nuclear bases or coal mines. So that argument is used when it suits them. So yeah, I think we need to be making the counter argument quite strongly, as well as, obviously, we want green jobs, but we also, you know, jobs that kill life are not jobs worth having. Annie, someone's put sort of invited you to comment, Paul, and well, you arrived late, and had you not been late, you would have been on the panel. So I wondered whether you've got anything that you want to. Oh, you've just written a little message. Do you want to talk to us? Oh, maybe Annie can't hear. Yeah, Annie's comment was that Estelle is from Friends of the Earth, tried to engage Steve Rotherham.
Unmute. That's better.
Oh,
sorry.
Thanks, Annie.
Sorry, Katie. I thought I'd been muted by the host. My apologies. It was myself. Yeah, Estelle is the Northwest coordinator of Friends of the Earth. Estelle, myself, and Jazz, who's also involved in XR and coordinates the Climate Action Group for Liverpool, I had a meeting with Steve Rotherham, which was also attended by Mark Knowles, who is the lead environment officer, or was, for the Combined Authority. And we tried to during the meeting, tried to kind of pin him down on, I'm trying to think of the kind of right words and trying to be kind. I think we tried to kind of pin him down on the kind of.
You don't have to be kind.
Okay, fine. We were trying to kind of say to him about the contradictions of some of his kind of, even these kind of environmental kind of aims and stuff. Estelle particularly is quite knowledgeable about hydrogen generation and was trying to kind of pin him down on his kind of, oh, we're going to have hydrogen buses and we're going to have this and the future is this and stuff. And it was quite a challenging meeting insofar as it was quite hard to pin him down. And just as an aside, I'd recommend anyone going to have a meeting with him, and he was quite open to meeting, to only have 2 or 3 questions, so that you can just kind of keep trying to bring him back to those questions, because clearly he's a politician, he wants to get his picture across, but he really didn't want to hear about Rimrose Valley and the destruction of habitats, and yeah, the kind of whole kind of irony of this kind of more jobs and high-tech solutions for things. And I don't know whether that's because obviously he, I would imagine, has some kind of broad knowledge of things, but relies on officers, as most politicians and councillors do. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, myself and a few others are on the climate partnership, Benji and 1 or 2, Ed, and a few others are on the climate partnership. And I think that it wouldn't be unreasonable to say there's a bit of disquiet about how that's kind of going in terms of its teeth. But kind of, and my apologies, are kind of, obviously I've missed over an hour, but I think in terms of kind of whether it's challenging Peel or being part of getting the kind of right decisions to be made, it's kind of, it needs to happen on different levels. So I personally don't think it's a kind of one size fits all kind of thing, partly because there's a complexity of the operations of these organisations, and that's whether that's a local authority or a private company. So I think it has to be staged, you know, different approaches. I also think as much as possible to try and get involved in some of the strategic partnerships that are there, and ask some of the difficult questions. You know, my thing is they don't pay my wages. So if I can be part of something and ask some difficult questions, then I'll do it, because it's all right to ask difficult questions. If they're paying me, then, you know, maybe that makes it more difficult and I'm compromised. But, you know, and I don't know whether that goes as far as become shareholders so that you can turn up at a annual general meeting or something. But, you know, apologies if other people have already said these things and I've kind of just repeating what's already been said.
No, please don't apologise. You've not repeated other than this. And I think what can hopefully come out of these sorts of conversations is how we do work in different ways and we do different things. But if we can all be in touch with each other, then that can really strengthen the impact of what we do. And
I think, yeah, I agree. I think something that's been mentioned by Paul and others via the chat is also the kind of, you know, collaborating, the coming together of different groups and sharing. And I think, you know, certainly in the last year, through Friends of the Earth, you know, the reach into and with different groups, partly through kind of welcoming speakers, but also going to other people's meetings and getting in touch with other groups and finding out what they're going on. Because I think to some extent it's about building a movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. And actually I've just realised that I've got a really good example that I can share. unfortunately, Stu from the Rimrose Valley campaign wasn't able to come this evening. He was naturally would have been a sort of a speaker and to talk about that campaign, but something that's come about recently, and partly through, you know, I know I've come and spoken about biomass at Friends of the Earth meetings and other events, but so the Rimrose Valley campaign have become quite interested in the issue of biomass, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, the importation happens through the port of Liverpool of wood pellets, which come from forests in the southern US, biodiverse forests that are chopped down, turned into pellets, brought by ship to Liverpool, then they go by rail to Drax Power Station, where they are burnt alongside coal. I'm repeating here that Drax is the biggest carbon emitter in the UK, yet is desperately trying to promote its green credentials. And they get government subsidies for this wood pellet burning, which, as I've mentioned before, was to the detriment of the solar and wind industries. And obviously, it's took a while for this to become sort of solidified as an argument. But you know, Peel is saying that they need to expand the port because they're a profit-making company and they want to get bigger, and so they need to expand the road network because there's already enough lorries on the road which are polluting the local areas. And you know, one of the proposed routes is Rimrose Valley, so it's going to go through a country park. It's not going to reduce, it's going to increase the amount of HGVs pumping air pollution into the local air. But meanwhile, all the rail capacity is taken up with these bloody wood pellets, which just needs to stop. So suddenly you've got this really joined up argument to say, why the hell are we widening the roads when actually we need to stop these biomass imports? And it's took a little while of working together to really crystallise that into an argument that now actually I've ended up sort of writing down that argument. And now it no longer seems like either campaign piggybacking on the other, which at first I think that's, you know, Rimrose are like, oh, well, we're not just trying to strengthen our campaign. And, you know, from the Biofuel Watch, it's like, oh, well, we don't just want to use your campaign. And then it's like, well, no, actually, this really works together as a strong argument. And I think the more that we do that and sort of cooperate and share information, the more we can, instead of being stretched too thin by trying to do a million different things, which is, you know, those of us who are active tend to do more than we've got time for. But instead you're sort of bolstering what you're doing with what other people are doing. So I think that as much of that as we can do.
I think a really important thing that you've just said there, which brought me, reminded me of this book, How to Resist, by Matthew Bolton. He is the guy who won the living wage campaign. And one of the key things that he says in this book is to turn problems into issues. He talks about women getting equal pay. And it's all very well and good to go out on the streets and protest about women aren't getting equal pay. But if you went out and protested, women aren't getting £6.70 or whatever it was an hour, it's an issue, not a problem. If you protest about climate change is an issue. If you protest for a citizens' assembly to tackle climate change, that's an issue. Governments can say, oh yeah, we agree, climate change is bad, or, you know, yeah, we're sad that women aren't getting paid the same as men. But there's no actions there. There's no actionable point that you're trying to fight for. So the citizens' assembly, or the specific things that you're actually asking for, is a really, really important way to sort of frame your protests and frame what you're actually asking for. Also, it's a great book. Really, really inspiring and very, very short read.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the ways that different organisations can work quite well together. If some are jumping up and down about the problem and then others are presenting it as a solution that can make the jumping up and down go away, then that could be that can work, you know, sort of good cop, bad cop approach to your engagement. Can work quite well. Has anyone else got any questions or points?
I have.
Go on, Nikki. Nice
I'm
to
not,
hear your voice.
if others who haven't already spoken don't want to chip in. Shall I go?
Yeah, yes, please.
You know, Liverpool City Council, I know we're really wider than Liverpool, but Liverpool City Council have this COVID recovery plan. And I wondered, I've done a tiny bit of looking into it and then I've dropped the ball. So it's now about 2 months old, I think. But it seems to be mostly about bailing out commercial landlords from what I can see. It's got a little bit about retrofitting houses, and it's got a little bit, which is something like 4,000 houses. And it's got bits of other stuff, but the central plank seemed to me to be support for commercial landlords. So I have wondered whether I've left it too late to tackle councillors or to ask councillors, you know, what sort of provisos they're putting on any support for commercial landlords, like,
Can you hear this?
you know, like asking them to retrofit their properties or, you know, that sort of thing. Does anyone know anything about the plan or any campaigns around it?
I don't know of any specifically, although it's one of the, we did the process we did at the port, we created a leaflet, and that was one of the sort of suggestions, was that, you know, green jobs, sort of retrofitting homes and putting in insulation. I think it's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's just, I think people have said it's a victim of its own lack of glamour, that it's not as, you know, saying that you're going to build a coastal tidal barrage. Oh, great, mega project, looks good. Saying you're going to insulate homes, but in terms of both poverty and environmental impact in one go, it's absolutely what we should be pushing for. And I don't know that you could be too late on it. I don't know if anyone else is engaged more than me to respond.
Well, on that, I think at some time I'm going to get round to writing a letter to my councillors about this local plan. And I'm quite happy to make that letter available to anybody who wants a copy of it, in case other people want to also lobby councillors.
I know there's a couple of strategies coming up, just with my council hat on. Urban space, I can't remember, it's some Swizzy name, sort of around developments in city areas, and it looked very, very good. I've seen a very, very early draft stage of it, which I'm not allowed to share or talk about at this stage. But as a green champion who is trying to build relationships with the voluntary sector, I will be getting a copy of that to consult with groups, hopefully in the next couple of months. I'm not sure whether it's linked to the coronavirus recovery scheme. However, it is a key policy document within Liverpool City Council. So it would be great if in a month or two, when I do get that document, we have further networked and further strengthened our relationships with everybody on this call and beyond. So there is a single point of contact where I can go consult on this, and here are the key organisations, and get all your feedback as well, because they can only do what they can do based on their models and based on how they do their consultations. I think COVID is a great opportunity for us, because firstly, they've realised that there's a lot of people out there who do a lot of work for nothing, and maybe they can capture some of that to, you know, get us to do some legwork. And also, they do have some money to spend, and I do believe they want to spend it in the right way. But sometimes the information that they get and the way they have of gathering information isn't necessarily as effective as it could be. So we can help with that, and at the same time potentially have a big influence on policies going forward.
Great, thanks, Paul. Just looking in there. You've made a comment there about the recovery plan. Phil, I don't know if you want to elaborate on your point at all.
I think the only elaboration would be to apologise for my cynicism. But in the plan that was sent, there were a number of partners, the universities, Peel Holdings, etc. It was very detailed, but when you read through it, you couldn't help thinking, well, when this lands on whoever's desk it lands on, it's just going to be pushed aside. And I think it's kind of represents an unwillingness on the part of local politicians to acknowledge the scale of the financial crisis, the economic crisis that we're facing, and also an unwillingness to really address the issues regarding climate change. I mean, it was an impressive document, but I don't think it's going to be received sympathetically by any of the people in government at the moment. Well, actually, it wasn't an impressive document because it used the same old economic arguments, but if you were looking for detail, there was a lot of detail in there. But I don't think it's going to go anywhere, to be honest.
Sorry, just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting it was a good plan in terms of, I mean, climate change was strikingly missing from it, amongst lots of other things.
Well, I wasn't suggesting that you were saying that, Nick, at all. It's just, I know you weren't saying that, and you didn't need to clarify what your position was.
I've just noticing the comment about Peel, and I think that's definitely a good angle to go for, that will, you know, have popular appeal. Someone was saying about them using tax havens. My friend was telling me how they're offering lots to Sefton Council at the moment in terms of the Strand, and you know, we shouldn't be left in a position where companies are able to buy their way in by offering cash-strapped councils facilities and resources, because these companies should be paying the taxes that mean that these institutions have the money they need. In Selby, where Drax is based, they've bought that town. The local Friends of the Earth group are scared to campaign about the issue that's most locally pressing, both in terms of its global impact, but also the local impact on air pollution. They've had like security guards threaten them, and we can't let that happen here with Peel. And I think that's one way to sort of engage over the issue is to not support plans that involve them buying, which we already know they do, buying our local government. Was I going to say something else? Just having a look at the chat here. Yeah, local action. I think that is what we need to do. We just go around in circles, but I think we just need to try and make them feel the pressure a little bit. think we'll wrap up soon. There's one final poem. So I don't know if anyone has any more points. We'll come back to say goodbye after the poem. But yeah, I don't know if anyone's got any more points or questions to raise before we go.
Katie, I've just put, I'm not very good at IT, and I've put it's gone to Phil Maxwell privately, but I meant it to everyone, that Liverpool City region have just given 34 million to the airport to help them over the crisis, which says an awful lot about their priorities. And when I challenged a local councillor about this, he just dismissed it. He said, "You don't care about jobs." So I mean, that's what we're up against. So I don't want to leave on a depressing point, but
no, I think we need to know what we're up against and not be under any illusions, but also to not despair. You know, I think the Heathrow decision was a bit of hope in this, that these sort of juggernauts feel unstoppable, but they're not. And I think this hopefully this poem that we're going to end on, which unfortunately it's a poem by Colin Watts. Unfortunately, Colin's not here to read it, and also unfortunately there is not a young person here to read it. So I'm going to read it myself. I just feel like it's a that we did have someone from the youth strike, Liverpool Youth Strike for Climate, who unfortunately had to cancel at the last minute. So I'm going to read this poem, and hopefully there's going to be some nice pictures to go with it, Neil. Is that right? Cool. Okay, so to end on a positive note, this poem is called In Celebration. All hail the sound minds of those young who rise from their desks and head for the streets. This can't wait till I'm bigger. Defying the men who grow fat on plundering the world, you're earning, we're burning. Defying those who shout and scream at them to go back to school. Activism is learning. All hail the stout hearts of those young who stand proud with their banners. We'll be less active if you'll be less shit. All hail the bright eyes of those young who read between the lines. Denial is not a policy. The keen ears of those young who hear the truth behind fake news. Dinos thought they had time too. The open hearts of those young who feel the most at risk in the world. Where can we go? The sharp noses of those young who sniff out the hypocrisy behind fine words. If you don't act like adults, we will. The good taste of those young who relish substance over presentation. This is what democracy looks like. Oh, haven't finished. Oh, tech problems. All hail the onward march of those young who can see the temperatures soaring, who can hear the animals dying, who can feel the oceans rising, who can taste the forests burning, who can smell the corporations lying. There is no planet B. Thank you, Colin, for that wonderful contribution. I'm sorry you couldn't be here yourself. I'm just putting the link to that poem in the chat. And are we able to save the chat to send round to people, Neil? Yes. Okay. So on that note, oh, hi Richie. You've just joined us and we're about to go. Yeah, so if no one has any last words, you are welcome to them if you want. I just want to say some thank yous really. First of all, to all the people who have contributed their articles to this issue, some of which, you know, people have updated them to make them relevant to what's gone on with COVID, the timing of which, I think in the end, I think it was great timing, although it was like pretty gutting that we were about to print the magazine and then it all fell apart. But I think it's allowed us to do something really useful to keep conversations going that, you know, might have been hard to keep the momentum up. So I want to say a big thanks to everyone who's contributed and who has updated their articles, to everyone who works really hard on environmental issues locally, to make there be a magazine to feature all these issues, and people who write about the issues, you know, in poems. You know, that's a really important aspect of the conversation that can reach people in other ways. So thank you very much, and for keeping going during lockdown when it's been really difficult. The fact that people have carried on organising, the fact that people are here now. You know, it is a shame that we're not all in a room together with live music and a few beers maybe, but you know, it's great to see everybody's faces. And you know, we do have people here who maybe wouldn't be otherwise. We've got Sally, who's in Stroud, she's involved with Greenpeace down there, so she's getting some ideas to take back there. So there's definitely some silver linings as well as the clouds. I'd like to make particular thank yous to Jane, Frank, Paul, and Roz, who's unfortunately had to go, for you know, speaking on the panel. And there has been a question here about will there be any more of these meetings in the future, so maybe come back to that in a moment. I want to say a massive thanks to Paul, who's continued throughout a difficult situation where he's ended up going down to Devon to look after his mum, and yet he's still been putting everything up on the website. So thank you very much to Paul. I also want to say thanks to Tracy, who took all the amazing youth strike images that you've seen and which have appeared with some of the articles. I think they've really added something really positive in these quite gloomy times, to see those pictures and remember that those people, they're still there and they're going to come out the other side. They've carried on. You know, some of the youth strikers were on the radio, that, you know, they haven't switched off. I want to say a huge thanks to Sandy. Unfortunately, Sandy wasn't able to come tonight. She's done loads of proofing and sub-editing behind the scenes and been a great moral support. And Paul Green as well has helped with communications stuff. And Neil, who I am not the most technical person, and I would not really have been able to manage this without Neil's help. So big thank you to Neil and to everybody for coming, and to Anton and Teo and to Dave for reading your poems this evening, which has really helped to, you know, live music is more difficult, but poems we really can. This is a really great medium for them, so thanks for bringing them. So Carol, you asked whether there was going to be future meetings, and I do think we should really try and keep in touch. There's nothing planned at the minute, but you know, we've got contacts here that I think people's emails addresses will have been stored who signed up to the event. So let's keep in touch and keep fighting the good fight, because we have to really. We're fighting for the future and we don't have many options, but yeah, thank you very much for all your time and energy, and hopefully see you in real life soon. Do try and make it to in-person events, because they're a really good way to catch up and plan and plot and scheme and take down this terrible system. So keep at it, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Casey.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.
Oh, bye everyone.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.